All right, welcome back. How are you enjoying this series? We are in what I think part three of our pivot, pause, or rebuild your business series. I would love to hear your feedback. Okay, send me a DM, tell me the parts that you love, leave a review, all the things. Okay, share it on social, tag me. Okay. Today, we're talking about the during, right? What it looks like to be in the midst of a pivot. And I want to offer some suggestions and some tips to help you make it through the transition smoother, ideally. Okay. So, number one, the idea here is that when we're in a pivot, now some of this depends on the kind of pivot that you're taking, right? Some people are pivoting and pausing their business. Some people are pivoting and changing their business model. Some people are pivoting, selling a company and starting a new business. There are lots of different kinds of pivots. Okay. If you happen to be in the space of pivoting something within your, like, that is not a pause. Okay. I'm going to talk about the pause separately here in a second. Then what I want you to be able to focus on is regaining momentum. So I talked about this in the last episode that people who are shifting or pivoting their business are in what we call the pre-scale phase, right? The pre-scale phase is basically for seasoned entrepreneurs who have done a lot of things, but they don't have one thing working, right? They got a lot of different things half working, right? And so we define momentum as getting one thing working, right? Because that's what you need to scale, right? That's what this season is all about. It is about restabilizing. It is about stabilizing yourself emotionally, income wise, et cetera, right? And so the number one goal is momentum. We want to get back into momentum. And you need to be patient with yourself as you do this, right? Because again, there's a lot of grieving that happens inside of transitions that people do not talk about. So I have a client right now who she was in my mastermind and she got out of the mastermind. Her 1 year time was up and she loves the community. She didn't want to leave the community, but mastermind is expensive, cost thousands of dollars a month, right? So she had to make a tough decision. And we were talking and I offered my services. She took me up on them, right? And the number one thing that she's wanting to do is rebuild self trust. There's so much loss of self trust that happens with coaching programs, with entrepreneurship as a whole, et cetera. And one of the things that she had to do was to grieve the decision of leaving the mastermind, right? There are lots of those things, right? There's lots of changes that you make that you will have to grieve. So be patient with yourself as you are regaining momentum. This is why it's so important to know your numbers, which we talked about in the last episode, because if not, because of how long it can take. And I don't want to scare you. It does not mean it has to take years and years. It doesn't. It absolutely does not, right? 100% does not. But it is going to take what it takes, is the point. Everybody's situation is different. If I just lost my parents, right? If I'm recovering from surgery, right? If my husband just left, if the industry is completely different, oh, I need to give myself some time. Okay. So that's why I'm emphasizing being patient and focusing on what does it look like to regain momentum, AKA get one thing working. So that's the focal point when we're in during a pivot. The other thing that I would say is be mindful of your capacity. One of the biggest things that people struggle with, all my high achievers, my ambitious people, my go getters, my dream big people, right? It's like their identity is so wrapped up in big goals and achievement, which we're going to talk a little bit about, that it is hard for them to live in acceptance. And it's not just yeah, it's mostly my high achievers, but I'm thinking of a friend who is also an entrepreneur, right? Like my entire life is surrounded by entrepreneurs. This person also has like a physical disability as a result of surgery and different things that have happened, right? And he is having a really hard time, like accepting the changes that come with his disability. Okay. And when we talked about it, what I was explaining to him was the reason why you're stuck, the reason why you're feeling so trapped, right, in this season is because you won't accept the season that you're in. And he's like, I feel like if I accept the season, if I accept these terms, these diagnoses, these blah, 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 then I'm basically folding. I'm like defeated. I'm like, acceptance does not mean defeated. Unlearn that. Okay. Acceptance is the start of finding an aligned solution based on your situation, right? When you don't accept your reality, you create resistance. Guess what resistance does? It creates delays. Okay. And because transitions are often very emotional and they are often on the backs of something being forced, okay, and because a lot of people are burnt out and they don't realize it, you need to manage and be mindful of your capacity. Sometimes that means honoring your capacity, right? And being able to accept that I don't have the capacity for blank, whatever blank is, right? This is a big one for all my premenopausal people, right? Your capacity changes, right? So sometimes you need to honor your capacity, which comes with telling people no and decreasing some things. And then there are other times where you need to increase your capacity. It's, oh, I actually need to get out of my comfort zone. I actually need to push myself out of fear, right? And oftentimes we're trying to increase our capacity when we need to honor our capacity and vice versa. But regardless to whether you need to honor or increase, it always starts with acceptance. Always starts with acceptance. Okay. So that's my other point. The other thing I want you to be mindful of when you're in a pivot is integration. Okay. I could go deep on this, but essentially what I mean by that is you need to be regularly reminding yourself of how amazing you are. Because again, when you got a lot of things changing around you, losing parents and going through divorces and having changes in your body and empty nest stuff and tariffs and the economy and algorithms and blah blah blah, team members losing to all the things. It would be very easy for you to shrink into a negative space. And often that negative space has to do with doubt or shame or fear and it's, oh, you need to be regularly reminding yourself of who you are. We talked a little bit about this in episode number 1, right? So this is an ongoing thing. You need to ongoing. So that way, whether your pivot is 6 months or 6 years, I pray it's not 6 years, just so we're clear. Okay. But either way, ongoing integration, ongoing reminding yourself of who the fuck you really are. Okay. All right. The other thing I want you to be mindful of, and this is such a big one, like I could just spend 32 minutes on it, but I won't. Okay. Because nobody want to be listening to those 97-minute podcast. Some people do. Okay. Maybe you one of them. I don't do that. Okay. So I ain't going to try to put y'all through that. The other thing I want you to be really mindful of is playing small. The number of times, because here's the thing, trauma changes you. And having to pivot your business or choosing to pivot your business often comes with trauma. We don't always equate it with trauma, but I promise you that if you're grieving something, there's a good chance that the trauma is attached to that. Okay. And trauma changes you. One of the biggest ways trauma changes you is acting like you don't want what you do want. Right. So an example of this would be, oh yeah, I want to be married, or I I would like to make $1 million or whatever the desire is, but it don't really matter. It's okay. Oh, that sounds good. And it might be true, right? That's not all bad, right? We do want detachment from the goals that we set for ourselves. Okay. Committed, but unattached. Okay. But when you get underneath the surface, what I often find is that we're lying to ourselves. We're acting like we don't want the thing as a way of protecting ourselves. But the truth is, we actually deeply crave the thing. But in an effort to not, it's our ego that says, I'm good. It don't really matter. And it's, oh, the number of people that I see playing small after a transition period, after they've had to go off and get a job, after they've paused their business, after it's been hard to restart the next business, right? Whatever it might be, there's a lot of playing small. Okay. And so I just want you to be mindful of that, because I hear a lot of people talk bad about big goals, right? And if you're not a big goal person, that's cool. But are you not a big goal person anymore after the trauma? And to be clear, experiences come to teach us things about ourselves. So maybe you were going after a 7-figure business and you don't want a 7-figure business. Maybe the industry put the noise in your head, right? And you never wanted that. And this experience taught you that I actually want a $250,000 business, or I actually want a five, whatever. That could be the case, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the most important reason is, what do you want And why, emphasis on why do you want it? If I say, oh, I'm going to go, I wanted a 7-figure business before, and now I want a 500K business. Okay, cool. Neither good nor bad. My question is, why did it change? Even if it went the other way around and it's, oh, I was going for a million and now I'm going for 10. Okay, great. Why? Because oftentimes we are making decisions from a place of ego, from a place of scarcity, from a place of fear, rather than what is true. Here's a perfect example of this. Okay. So, the same client that I was talking to you about that we're working on self trust. Okay. That's what she came to me for. And one of the first things that we do inside of my work, whether in a group program or whether you're doing one work with me, is we set some goals, right? I want to be clear about what is that you want, right, out of this, so I can personalize and customize our work. And when I was asking her about her focus and what she wanted, right, she wanted to set a revenue goal. Okay, great. I'm for that. Let's do it. Okay. When we start talking about the goal, she's throwing out these very, what I would call egoic numbers, right? They're like industry jargon numbers, 10K a month, 6-figure month, that kind of thing, right? So I already know that's not the real goal. Okay, I've been doing this a long time and I already, okay. So then I ask a couple questions, we dig a little deeper, and the goal is to set a goal that is meaningful to you. It doesn't matter whether the number is big, the number is small, right? It doesn't matter. It matters that it's meaningful to you. Okay. So when we did a little digger, we then set a new goal that was very meaningful to her. Okay. So I see her every 2 weeks. The first time she came back to me, right, we talked about the goal, we talked about the strategy, we did all the things. Okay. She comes back 2 weeks later. She's made over half of her money already. 2 weeks later. Okay, fantastic. We make some adjustments, we tighten some things. She comes back 2 weeks later. She's made 75% of the money. This is more money that she's made in the 8 years that she's been in business altogether. I don't know, that might be an extreme. The more money than she's made in a long time is the point. Okay. How is that possible? Because we're not setting egoic goals, right? We're doing internal work, right? Like, I'm not a woo person at all. Even though I'm a therapist, I'm not woo. Okay. Woo works, to be clear. There's nothing wrong with woo. It does work. It's not my style. That's all I'm saying. I know how to work with entrepreneurs who tend to be more ambitious. They need a little bit more tangible, practical, tactile kinds of strategies rather than go sit down and meditate, which works. Just not, just probably not some shit I'm finna tell you to do. Okay. So I said all that to say, be mindful of playing small because I see it happen a lot. Okay. So if you are early in the pivot, okay, this is what we're talking about is you already decided, because we talked about that in the last episode, and now we're in the pivot. Okay. One of the biggest things that you really need to be able to, I'm going to say master, but at the very least be very aware of, is your degree of clarity that you have. Again, there's a lot of decisions to be made as entrepreneurs, and there's even more decisions to be made when you're in transition. And decision fatigue often kicks in, right? And you need clarity in order to make sound decisions. Okay. And clarity comes from nuances. When you are evolving, you're not starting over, you're evolving. Okay. When you are evolving, the key is to identify the nuances, right? So let's just say I'm trying to come up with my marketing strategy. Okay. The key is, what did I learn in the last season about what I love about marketing and what I don't love about marketing? This is not a matter of market or don't market, right? All of that lacks context and lacks nuance. What we actually want to do is to be able to find the nuances. You know what? I really love, here's a great one. Okay. I love TikTok. Like, I love being able to jump on and do a 1 minute video, a 10-minute video, right? And just say whatever it is I want to say, right? And because I love TikTok, people have suggested, oh, you should go all in on TikTok and you should go all in on building a big, because a lot of people are like, well, you don't have a lot of followers. Number one, that's not my primary platform. That's not the platform that I go to get clients. Are there clients that come from that? Yes, but that's not where I'm generating the majority of my clients. It's also not the place that I want to build the business around. Even though I enjoy it, I want you to hear the nuance. And if you enjoy it, why would you not want to build your business around it? Because TikTok is the kind of platform that you have to produce consistently, right? And here's the thing, I'm going to get on almost every single day. I'm going to do 2, 3 videos every day. But the moment that you stop, like the algorithm rewards volume, right? It rewards consistency. Now, to some degree, all platforms reward consistency. But again, there are nuances, right? YouTube versus Instagram versus Facebook versus LinkedIn versus TikTok. When you compare all of those, you don't have to be on them all to the same degree. TikTok is one of those you have to be on a lot in order for it to work. I'm not committed to that. It's just fun for me. Okay. That's an example of the nuances. And when you understand that about yourself, you don't let people talk you into strategies, right? That don't actually. So, what am I going to do? Go hire a TikTok coach and help them build my platform? No, that's not the goal. That I don't actually want to build a TikTok, but you have to be grounded enough in yourself, which requires clarity. It requires nuance. Okay. So I want you to really be mindful of being clear about what you want and not just what you don't want. What you don't want is a great start, but I want you to be working towards what do I want? Okay. Because when you identify the nuances, it leads to the clarity that you need and it clears any resistance, which is what creates the delays. Okay. This is key because the level of intention that it requires for you to fulfill your assignment is far greater than you could ever imagine. And you probably are, like, literally, the level of intention it requires. We are good at starting the assignment, starting the mission, starting the business. But if we're talking about fulfilling and we're talking about finishing, oh, that requires an intention that few people even understand. Okay. So that's the other thing I want you to be really mindful of as you're pivoting, right? We took those spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks approach when we started the business, right? And again, there is a place for that. But this time we're building a better foundation. I could call her a client, but we haven't done a lot of stuff together. She was in a challenge I did a few months ago. So she's done a little bit, but not like private coach or anything. But we were talking and she had to shut down her business because of contracts and different things, whatever. And she's going to be starting a new business. And she was bummed about it to a certain degree, which makes perfect sense. And one of the things that I said was, man, what a great opportunity to do it right this time. Because the first time we didn't know what we was doing. We didn't know what we was doing. Best know what we doing now. What a great opportunity to do it even better this time. That's what's being presented to you. This beautiful opportunity wrapped in pain and grief. Okay. The other thing I want you to be mindful of is rejuvenating. Okay. I could do a whole episode just talking about increasing your capacity, which I probably should, making a mental note of that. But the goal is to actually recover from burnout. The goal is to actually rejuvenate and grieve and heal. It sounds woo, but like in the last episode, I read you the post, right? That my previous client made. If you just move, you're gonna be mad about that. It's not gonna yield the return that you want. Okay. That constantly having being on the go is the problem. You know what? Let's talk about that too. Yeah, let's talk about it. Okay, here are the reasons why people stay in the pivot for so long, or why pivoting is so hard, why letting go can be challenging. It just feels very emotional. Number one is what we call addiction to achievement. So, for context, I'm a dually licensed therapist, which just means I have multiple licenses. Obviously, that was dumb. I don't know why I said that. Everybody knows what dually licensed means. One of my licenses is as an addictions counselor. Okay. It's called an LCAC. And I spent the majority of my therapy career working in addictions. I literally loved it. Okay. It's a hard field to be in, to be clear, right? Because you lose people. It's just a lot, right? But I loved it. Okay. It aligns with how I like to work with people. So I have a very strong background in addictions. And we often think about drugs, maybe sex, maybe gambling, right? When we think about addiction. But what I talk to my clients about a lot is this addiction to achievement. It is the reason why we get burnt out. right? The reason why we have a hard time resting, the reason why entrepreneurship is so hard for so many people is because we have an addiction to achievement, which is just really an unhealthy relationship to work, right? What I like to say is that so many people are externally driven rather than being internally led, right? When you struggle with an addiction to achievement, which means you're just getting your value from what you do, right? You're getting your sense of worth from what you do, not who you are, right? When you struggle with that, what it leads to is what I call entrepreneur trauma, right? You essentially have poor outcomes because addiction to achievement is going to have you go, right? And go can get you to a certain level. There is a certain level of results that you can get there, but many times, number one, those results are not sustainable. And a lot of times you never get to the goal that you were actually shooting for. You get to a goal, but it's not the one that you want. It's like climbing the wrong ladder. Okay. And when we get into those spaces, right, when we get into addiction to achievement, it means that we're essentially doing the wrong thing. And if we're doing the wrong thing, then it's going to lead to the wrong outcome. And when we have poor outcomes, we end up with entrepreneur trauma. Okay. So when you think about poor outcomes, let's say you launched a program and nobody bought it or two people bought it. Boom, there's trauma. We don't always think about it from a traumatic perspective. Sometimes we do, but a lot of times it's traumatic in the moment and then we move on. But remember what I told you, trauma compounds. Okay. So it could be anything from launching a program and it being unsuccessful to posting a bunch of content and it not getting traction, putting a webinar together, losing a team member, anything related to your business at all, getting a chargeback, getting client complaints, getting an unexpected tax bill, like all of these things have the potential to be entrepreneur trauma. Okay. So addiction to achievement leads to entrepreneur trauma, and entrepreneur trauma leads to poor performance, right? This is why often my clients feel like they have an execution problem. It's, oh, I need to be executing more consistently. Oh, I need to be executing faster. Oh, I need to fill in the blank with whatever it is that people think in terms of their effort, right? I had a client once who she was just like, I'm lazy. I can't, I'm like, I feel behind. I should be further ahead. And I'm like, ma'am, can you be lazy and work 50 hours a week? Do you realize that those don't go together? You're not lazy. What are we, right? But what we see is the poor performance. We know that we procrastinate or we're perfectionists or we're people pleasing or whatever our form of self sabotage is. And then we think we have an execution problem. But remember, the execution problem is the surface of the problem. And if all you try to do is fix the execution problem, what you'll look for is productivity hacks. And productivity hacks can be helpful, but they will not solve the problem, which creates a whole nother issue within itself. Whenever you implement something and it doesn't really work, it temporarily works or it barely works or it doesn't work at all, it creates a little bit more doubt. And it's, we got to get good at solving the root problems. Okay. Oh, I'm going to play this clip for you because it's a perfect example of what I mean, where we get into this cycle. So when people are in this cycle, we call them unfulfilled hustlers, AKA shooters, right? That's our word when people are in this space. I'm going to play this clip because I think it articulates it really well. I was in a program some years ago with Eric Thomas, the motivational speaker. And as a part of it, I bought this, I don't know, this thing. I'm going to play just a piece of the clip so you'll get a better understanding of what I mean by shooter. And you can identify which part of this resonates with me, if any. Okay. So let's do it.
And the goal is, I need you to understand, like, to go to that next level, you don't need to do anything, but you don't need to do something. Nothing needs to change but your mindset. And what needs to change about your mindset is no longer, I don't need knowledge anymore. Eric don't need knowledge. I need specific knowledge. So he tells me when I see every book I get now, I just read about like 3 or 4 sentences and I'm through with the book. Stop thinking you deep because you read and you study. No, you need explicit knowledge. You need 100 pages. All right, so you feel like this in UD3 class. So I'm weird. Lil D gave me this. So Lil D said that there's a difference between a dude who know how to shoot and a sniper. Said, do you know how to shoot? Load them up. They said, they might shoot up the whole place and get right in. So you see that movie before? It died like a man running, slide. We was like, they still, they missed the man. They done wasted all kind of bullets, all kind of energy. A bullet said a sniper in the room. Three hands. Or use the restroom and eat at the right time. Sniper didn't use the bathroom. She don't move in the spot. See if I miss an opportunity. One heavy task, then heavy just nervous. And I'm in consuming it. And it's not me not laying on that. This you give me 4 slides, Grant. That's all I need. You will add you. You go 4 slides. That's all I need for each place. Tonight, I'm just like, 2 weeks. I'm a sniper now. You better see me wanting work my little slides. It's switching on because I'm a sniper now. I just never taken the thing. I just need to read the newspaper. I need to get confidence in it. Now, the reason why you're not successful in redundancy is you have not heard of place. You didn't miss in America because you in 6 different places. You're not a thief. You know what? Worse. Right away, you're doing it. You done messed up the whole. You done kill the person. You ain't friends. Bullets everywhere. People tear stuff up. You got nothing done. The cleanup is worse than the actual execution. You guys spend no time in the cleanup. I mean, no cleanup. Most of the people don't even know the person got shot. Serious. Hey, and you at a place in your life where you're doing this. I can't you. Like, I hate to see you keep having the conferences and you're not going from year to year. Hate to you like, what? I'm praying about it. I'm praying about it, but you ain't no other place. And you got to get to a place where you focus and then you got it.
How powerful is that clip? Okay. How powerful is it? It is the epitome of addiction to achievement, where we are just go do busy, busy, and rarely hitting our man, rarely hitting a target. When I heard that, I was like, this is it. This is the whole, this is the prop. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to belabor that point, but in our camp, we talk a lot about the difference between being a shooter and a sniper. And one of the things that I want you to be mindful of as you are pivoting is simplicity, right? Like part of the reason, oh, I could just go down a whole rabbit hole here, but one of the things that's really important when you're pivoting is that we don't want this to be a lateral move. We want this to be an elevation, right? We're evolving. A lot of times I see people pivoting and it's literally a lateral move. And it's on, no, that's not the goal. The goal is for this to be a step up. But in order for it to be a step up, you have to do it the right way. We have to build the foundation properly. And a lot of that has to do with simplicity, right? And one of the reasons why we struggle with simplicity and we have this tendency to overcomplicate things is because we don't have the capacity to hold the desire that we have, right? So think about it this way. So let's just say you meet someone and they have these standards for their relationship, standards for their eating, standards for their business, insert whatever kind of standards you want, right? But then 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, a month later, you see them doing something that's the opposite of what the standard that they said they have, right? The problem is that a lot of us have have standards for our business, for our life, for our relationships, but we don't have the capacity to hold the standard. When I say I want something, i.e., a desire, and I've made a decision to go after it, right? But I can't seem to get to the destination, that is a capacity problem. Okay. And the reason why we struggle with this so much is because this whole shooter mentality and shooter behavior, this unfulfilled hustler, like we call it, is when we operate from a fear based identity. I won't go into all of that because the podcast episode is already getting super long, right? But I want you to be able to recognize where this is coming from, right? Like our brains are literally wired for safety, not success, right? Which means it's constantly pushing you towards the thing that is comfortable, even if the comfortable thing is not going to get you closer to your desires, right? This is an internal problem, right? And you have to learn how to solve an internal problem with an internal solution. Masterminds and business coaching is not an internal solution. Those solve external problems, marketing problems, sales problems, team problems, automation problems, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. One of the biggest things that you have to learn how to do is to decenter work from your identity. Don't now before you hang up, before you be like, I don't know what she talking. I'm not telling you not to work. Most of my clients do not want to live the soft life. Some of them want to live the soft life in theory, but most of my clients are very ambitious. They got big goals. They're not trying to retire next week. And if you do it, that's cool. That's not a problem. But I want to be clear. I'm not telling you not to work. When I say decenter work from your identity, I'm not talking about ambition. I'm not talking about not working. I'm talking about changing how you work. That is what I'm suggesting. That is how you get yourself out of this hole. Is you have to learn to change how you work. It's like the analogy of I'm going to mess it up, but you'll get to just. You've heard people say this thing. If I had an hour to get this, chop this tree or whatever, or knock this tree over, how would I spend the time? And people respond with, I spend the first 50 minutes sharpening the axe, right? That's a great example of how, we have to change how we work in order to not end up in burnout again, in order to not have a lateral move. That is what I help people do. Okay. And if you feel like you need support, reach out, DM me. We have a whole program where we support people in transition. Just DM me on Facebook. That is the platform that I'm on the most. I'm happy to support you. Otherwise, I will see you. Actually, you know what? I want to read something to you because it really speaks to this whole fear based identity thing. And then I'm going to let you go. Okay. So, just for context, what I'm going to read is from a 7-figure entrepreneur. Okay. And I think sometimes we feel like, remember when in the last episode or one of these episodes, I gave a breakdown of how we segment our audience from the scaled person, which is the 7-figure person, because every group goes through a messy middle. Every group goes through a pivot. Okay. So there was the scaled person, which is our 7-figure person. There is the shifting person, right? The person who has decided to pivot and is looking for clarity and direction and moving their way through the pivot. Then there is the stuck person who made the decision to pivot a while ago and can't get out of it. And then we got the stagnant person who is upset, frustrated, annoyed, burnt out, whatever it might be, but not currently doing much to get out of it. Maybe previously, but just not in this moment. Okay. So the thing that I'm going to read is a great example of everything that we're talking about. Oh, excuse me. And it really brings things home. Okay. So just FYI, yeah, let me just read it to you. Okay. So it says, I told my leadership team something that changed how they see me and how I see myself. And they say, I was running this company scared for years. Again, 7-figure entrepreneur. Not scared of failure, scared of stopping. Record breaking month, better get another one. Biggest event ever, next one needs to be bigger. Hit every goal, find bigger, more audacious ones. I could be on a plane, heading to a resort, more money in my account than I ever imagined, still checking emails, still strategizing, still unable to just be. Because here's what I finally admitted. I built everything from anxiety, not ambition. Okay. The hustle people admired, that was fear. The drive people praised, that was fight or flight mode. The growth people celebrated, that was me running. From what? From who I was before the success, right? The kid who was raised by his crack addicted aunt till third grade and ate syrup sandwiches, fried spam, sugar water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Living with roaches, all this kind of stuff. Right? That version of me, I was terrified of becoming again. So I never stopped moving. And here's the cost nobody talks about: an anxious leader creates an anxious company. I was speeding, grinding, and suffocating, which led to me being exhausted, unfulfilled, chasing. The business was growing, but I was dying inside. Then I started prioritizing something radical: stillness, not meditation apps or morning routines, real stillness, where you stop running from yourself. I could go on, but you get the point. Okay. When we say unfulfilled hustler, when we say shooter, that is us saying, oh, this is a scarcity. You're in scarcity mode, right? You're living from a fear based identity. That is where all of this go now behavior, all of this addiction to achievement stuff. All right. I will see you in the next episode.